Okay. I think there's going to be an echo thing, but
Everybody else is using themselves.
okay. All right, very good. Well, for those of you guys who don't know me, my name is Stacie Hayes. I work in career services here at Morningside University. Generally, I don't wear sweats, but after 7 p.m. I do wear sweats. So if I come back to campus after 7, you're going to see me in sweats. But they asked me to come and talk to you guys today about the graduate school process, as well as maybe some medical jobs that either students can do or things that you can do within a gap year if you're thinking about doing that. So I have some prepared things to talk about. Certainly, I'm interested in you guys getting your questions answered. So if you have specific things that you have questions on, or if I say something and you have questions about that, I'm happy to address those as we go along as well. Okay. So just kind of to get started, give you an overview of what we're going to go over today. We're going to talk about graduate school, the steps to getting started, an overview of that application process, as well as tips that we would have for success. All right. So the number one thing that you need to do from the perspective of graduate school is to figure out what programs you are interested in. This is a very individual and specific process. So I have a lot of students come to me and say, what's the best graduate school for such and such? I don't have any idea what the best graduate school is for such and such, because if you ask 10 people, they'll give you one answer. They'll give you 10 different answers. And so it's impossible for me to know what's going to be the best program for you. The other thing that I would sort of say is, for the most part, employers are less interested in where you go to graduate school and more interested in the kind of experience that you have there and the accomplishments that you are able to do while you're there. So my kind of process for suggesting how people should start looking at schools is maybe find a graduate school search engine. Those are pretty easy to find on Google. Some of those will have sort of like filter items you can put in. So you can filter by degree area, you can filter by location, large city, small city, large school, small school, everything like that. And start to just gather data about what sort of schools are available in the area that you're looking for. Unless you're looking for like optometry or something like that, generally there's lots of schools available. Optometry, there's 13, so there's not that many, but otherwise there's usually quite a few schools that you can pick from. So I usually do recommend that you think about other factors. Is there geographic locations that you can go to where you will have family or friend support? Maybe people who can cut down on your living expenses, somebody that you can live with, or someone who can give you sort of like emotional support from that perspective. Is there an area that you would like to be in after graduation? It's likely if you do your graduate degree in an area in which you would like to eventually live, you will most likely do any clinical or practicum hours there, maybe a residency there, establish kind of those kind of connections that will be helpful for you in moving forward. Once you figure out the schools that you're interested in, then you have to start to identify their application requirements as well as their application deadlines. So I generally recommend that you have an Excel spreadsheet that you set up that says things like, this is the school, this is the name of the program, because some people call their programs different kinds of things. This is the application deadline. These are all the things that I need to get put together before that deadline. I also do recommend that you follow either that school or that program on Facebook or other social media platforms, because they usually will send through notifications of when the application opens. They'll also give you good tips throughout the year. So they might say, here's some tips on personal statements, or here's some tips on interviewing. So you would either follow that specific school that you're interested in, or you would follow the application service that you're using. So if you're looking at a centralized application system like the CASPA or the AMCAS or something like that, you can follow that program also on Facebook, and it will give you some of those good tips. This is really the most important step that you have to take in pursuing graduate studies. At least once per year, somebody comes into my office in October and says, I want to go to medical school next year. And I say, it's October. you're not going to be able to go to medical school next year. Most of those programs are up and going. So it's important for you to know what that process looks like, how much time you have, and how you need to move forward with that. In addition, certain programs do rolling admission, which means they continually pull people out of their application pile. So for example, if they would have a December 1 application date, they're going through that pile 4 or 5 times. You have a greater likelihood of getting pulled out of that pile if you're in there every time they go through it. So if you wait to apply until December 1st, if that is indeed their application deadline, you're only going to get one look at your application. So it's really important to be able to plan out what this looks like. Just to kind of let me know what we're dealing with here. What kind of programs are you guys thinking about? Medical school? How many are medical school? Okay. I know you're OT. Okay. What are you guys thinking about? Vet? Okay. PA? All right.
Dental school.
Dental school? Okay. PA? Okay. Perfect. So this is, again, where you kind of set some of that stuff up. From the perspective of the programs that you guys are talking about, PA is also one that you really need to think about. Most PA programs have a specific requirement of how much direct patient care hours you need to get. Direct patient care is different than just going and shadowing a PA. That's observation, that's shadowing, that's separate. PAs require direct patient care, and only certain things count as direct patient care. And some schools will want you to have as much as 1,000 hours. So already, if you really only have 3 years to get all of your things together, you have to be planning how you're going to be able to get that much direct patient care. So this part is really important. And this is what I would actually recommend students do, even as first-year students, to figure out how am I going to plan out the next 3 years to know how I can be the most successful. The application process for most graduate schools, and I'm kind of gearing this towards, like the health professions, but certainly this kind of also goes along with if you're looking at research graduate school or graduate school in a different area outside of biology. Most programs will have some sort of prerequisites. And so it's generally easy to find those prerequisites either through the schools that you're interested in or the centralized application systems that you're looking at. Prerequisites are important because you can apply for programs if you haven't completed all of the prerequisites, but you have to have a plan for how you will complete those prerequisites. So it's important to know what those are. A lot of prerequisites also are sequential in nature. So for example, for medical school, a lot of times you're going to need Gen Chem 1 and 2, Organic Chem 1 and 2, and Biochem. And you can't take Biochem until you've taken all those other chems. So we're talking about not getting to Biochem till 2.5 years in if you start right from the beginning. So these prerequisites are important. Many programs will require either the GRE or some other kind of standardized test, including the MCAT, the PCAT, the OAT, the DAT, et cetera. And I'm going to talk a little bit about both of those here coming up in a second. All of them will require an official copy of your transcripts. So official is a very interesting word in the sense of transcripts. If you go to the registrar and you ask them for a copy of your transcript, they will give you one. They'll charge you like $10. The second you touch it, it is no longer official. So the only way your transcript is considered to be official is if it comes directly from the registrar's office, directly to the place where it's supposed to go. So most of the time you have to do some ordering from that perspective. At Morningside, we use a service called Parchment. So into Parchment, you can enter where you want your transcripts sent. Most programs will require some amount of observation hours or related experience. And again, that's where you're doing that research to figure out exactly how much you need. I think about a couple of years ago, we had a student who was interested in physical therapy, really wanted to go to DMU, was an awesome candidate, found out when he was applying that he needed 10 observation hours specifically in neurology. So we were able to get that, luckily, because we have that nice place called CNOS, which is just right in our backyard. But those are the kinds of things that can derail you if you're not really watching what is required of you. From the perspective of being competitive with your application, a lot of schools will look for research. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more moving forward, as well as your personal statement, and then your letters of recommendation or, well, your recommendations. There are two kinds of applications that you guys will be using: centralized versus decentralized. Centralized application is where everything goes to one place and then that place sends it out to everybody. I think everything you guys have mentioned is going to be a centralized application system except vet. I think vet sometimes is and sometimes is not. Most of these centralized application systems will have supplementary applications as well. So there's a lot for you to get done within your centralized application system. But then when you get done with that, there's a little bit more that you have to do with your supplemental apps. So you want to make sure that you're keeping track of that and what that looks like. The benefit to a centralized system is you only have to enter everything one time and then they send it out for you. Kind of like the con, the other side of that is it's a lot of stuff for you to put in there and it takes a long time. And so generally, I would recommend that you would start this process as early as you can. Most centralized application systems will open early in the summer. I also recommend that you have a graduate school resume that has all the kinds of things that are probably eventually going to go into that centralized application system. So it's just easier for you to enter things in. You have all the dates you need, you have all the names of things you need. It helps kind of jog your memory from that perspective. Talking a little bit about the GRE. Now, ever since COVID, the GRE is kind of hit or miss. So some programs are going to require you to take the GRE, some programs are not. So it's going to be helpful for you to, again, know specifically what your program is looking for. The GRE is a standardized test. However, there is no scientific information on the GRE. So it measures your analytical writing, your verbal reasoning, and your quantitative reasoning. Some of you might be thinking, well, that sounds like the ACT. This is the ACT on massive amounts of steroids, okay? So it's not the same. If you did good on the ACT, that doesn't mean you're gonna do good on the GRE. There really is no standard way of studying for the GRE, except to just start reading lots of different kinds of material, lots of journal articles, getting exposed to the kind of vocabulary that shows up on the GRE, as well as brushing up on your math. Interesting thing about the GRE is generally you have to start with your analytical writing. So if you are someone who doesn't like writing and it takes a lot out of you, you have to account for that because you have to write everything first. The GRE is no prior knowledge needed, which again just means that there's no great way for you to study for it besides taking a look at those journals and things like that. It focuses on critical thinking and problem solving skills. I would say for the GMAT and also a little bit for the MCAT, you don't have to score out of this world to do okay on the GRE. We generally would say you should shoot for an average score within the 50th percentile. And what that will do is that will not exclude you as a candidate. So if you score lower than that 50th percentile, that's going to start to affect your admission possibility most likely. If you score higher than that, it increases your abilities to get in. But if you do the average score, you still should be okay. Sometimes with the GRE, you also have to take the subject test. The subject test is subject specific. And the GRE and the GRE subject test can be taken here in Sioux City. You can generally schedule those fairly easily. It usually takes 4 hours. So you have to kind of keep that in mind. My recommendations is to get some study materials, even though there's nothing that you can study for in the GRE, there still are ways that you can start to kind of trick your brain into that kind of testing. Our library website has a database on it called Learning Express Tests, where we have sample tests for GRE as well as MCAT practice and things like that. So those are free tools that you can use. I also recommend Googling a couple of test prep companies like Kaplan and Princeton Review and things like that.